the regular city council meeting for the city of Algonac, Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. First time I've said that all year. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Bembas.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Here.
Councilman Gillis.
Here.
Councilwoman Harris.
Here.
Councilman Martin.
Here.
Councilman Scarbeck.
Here.
Mayor Stoneberg.
Here.
One present.
Will everyone please take a moment of silent prayer. Will you please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved. Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have an agenda. Tonight we have one presentation. It is the audit report for fiscal year 2020 to 21. And this is from McBride, Manley and Company PC, and Curtis McBride is here with us this evening to present all the numbers. Thank you. Curtis?
Happy New Year, Curtis.
Happy New Year. Well, good evening, Mayor, City Council members. It's that time of year again. It's great to see everyone in person this year, after being on Zoom last year. My name is Curtis McBride. I do know, I believe, pretty much everyone here. I am the managing partner for our firm at McBride Manley Company. I'm also our firm's governmental accounting and audit director. With me this evening is Amy Delia. She's the audit manager. She's also our firm's general audit director. And we are here tonight to present the results of the June 30, 2021 audit for the city of Algonac. Now, before I get into the presentation, which I believe all of you should have a hard copy sitting in front of you, I want to briefly talk about the financial statements themselves, which I believe you should all have. They were probably put in your packets last week. Specifically, I want to talk about the audit opinion. So there are three types of opinions you can receive from your auditor. There's what we call a clean or unmodified audit opinion, which means that we believe the financial statements are fairly stated and they're in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. Then there's what we call a modified opinion, which means that we believe the financial statements are fairly stated and are in compliance with a few minor exceptions. And then there's what we call an adverse opinion, which means that we do not believe that the financial statements are reliable and they're not in compliance with our standards. So I am pleased to announce for June 30, 2021, the city of Algonac did receive a clean or unmodified audit opinion from our firm. Now, just to clarify, that's just an opinion on the reliability and the accuracy of the financial records. It's not an opinion on the financial health of the city. It's not the primary focus of our audit. Now, moving over to the presentation, on the next slide, the first fund I want to talk about briefly is the general fund. So the general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes, state shared revenues, and federal, state, and local grants. So here we're looking at the balance sheet at the end of the year for the general fund. You can see the general fund had about $2,832,000 of assets at the end of the year. It had about $135,000 of liabilities against those assets to finish the year with an ending fund balance level of about $2,697,000. Now, to put that into perspective, the Michigan Department of Treasury recommends that at a minimum, your general fund balance level be at about 10% of annual expenditures in that fund. Now, that's the minimum. So to put that into perspective, your general fund expenditures were about $2.5 million for 2021, so your fund balance level is actually more than your annual expenditures in that fund. So in my opinion, you have a healthy fund balance level in your general fund for the period ending June 30, 2021. Now on the next slide, here we're looking at the general fund revenues and expenditures for the year, or the income statement, if you will. Here we're comparing 2020 to 2021. We'll talk about the revenues and expenditures, specifically in more detail in some subsequent slides. But you can see revenues went from about $2,737,000 in 2020 to about $2,940,000 in 2021. One of the major differences is you can see the second line from the bottom there, federal grants. You received about $92,000 in federal grants during 2021 that you did not in 2020. Again, I'll talk about that in a subsequent slide. You can see expenditures did go up also. You spent about $2,343,000 in 2020 and about $2.5 million in 2021. And you can see that for 2021, you actually had an increase, a net increase to your general fund balance level of about $436,000. Now in the next slide, here we're looking specifically at sources of revenue for the general fund, again comparing 20 to 21. As I mentioned in my previous slide, you can see total revenues did go up from $2,737,000 up to about $2,940,000 in 21. You can see property taxes did go up a little bit from $1,383,000 to $1,434,000. Now that's not because property tax rates went up, that did not happen. It's because taxable values went up from 2020 to 2021. You can see distributions from the state of Michigan did go up slightly from $421,000 to $479,000, so that's your state revenue sharing from the state of Michigan. You can see that the major difference, as I mentioned in my previous slide, was federal grant monies. So you actually received, as part of federal grants, the first responders hazard pay. You did have some of that, which was part of the COVID funding. You did actually receive some general CARES Act money, and you actually did receive some CARES Act money from St. Clair County, from the Sheriff's Department, your allocation of their funding. So those really explain the major differences in revenues between 2020 and 2021. Now, looking at the next slide, which is focusing primarily on expenditures, again comparing 20 to 21, you can see expenditures did go up from $2,343,000 to $2,504,000. A lot of that is in general government. Now, general government is primarily the city clerk, city treasurer, city manager, and the general administrative expenditures of the city. Now, you did make additional pension contributions in 2021 that you did not in 2020, and you agreed to do that. You did vote to do that, so that explains some of the increase in general government. Also, some of the other increases in general government had to do with some repairs and maintenance. In looking at it, I think you did improvements to the front door here at City Hall. You also did sidewalk ramp repair here at City Hall. And then you also did some work on the server during the 2020-2021 budget year. So those things really explain the increases in expenditures. But as I mentioned, even though you did have an increase in expenditures, it was more than offset by the increase you had in revenues. So you did end the year with a positive increase to your fund balance level in general. Now moving over to the next slide. Now the next two funds I want to talk about are a little bit different than general. These are the street funds, so major local streets. Now these funds primarily derive their revenues from distributions from the state of Michigan, from MDOT. These are what we call special revenue funds, and we call them special revenue funds because their fund balances are restricted for a special purpose, and that's for the construction and maintenance of streets throughout the city. So here's the balance sheet for these two funds, starting with major street on the left column. You can see you had just over $1 million of assets in major streets at the end of the year. Did not have any significant liabilities against those assets. So you finished the year with an ending fund balance level of just over $1 million. Local street fund, you can see you had about $678,000 of assets on hand at the end of the year. You had about $8,000 of liabilities against those assets and finished the year with an ending fund balance level of about $670,000. So in both of these funds, your fund balance levels were actually exceeded annual expenditures. You didn't have a lot of projects going on for streets in the 2020-2021 budget year, which is why you've maintained a healthy fund balance in these funds. Now on the next slide, this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for these funds, or the income statement, if you will. Again, starting with Major Street on the left, you can see it generated about $342,000 of revenues. You spent about $279,000 in Major Streets, so you had a net increase to fund balance level in Major Streets of about $63,000. You can see the major expenditure category in Major Streets is transfers to other funds. So you can see the Major Street Fund transferred $171,000. It actually was transferred to local streets. So under MDOT rules, Public Act 51 of 1951, your Major Street Fund is allowed to transfer up to 50% of its revenues over to local streets to help subsidize local streets. So with that, moving over to local streets, you can see it generated about $336,000 of revenues in local streets, spent about $123,000, and had an increase to your fund balance level of about $213,000. But again, as I mentioned, that's because Major Street transferred $171,000 over to local streets. Now on the next slide, I have a few slides here where I'm just briefly talking about doing some trend analysis. Here we're looking at state revenue trends going back to 2015. So the middle column is state revenue sharing. So those are the revenues that pass through the general fund. And then you can see distributions to street funds on the right. Those are the Act 51, the MDOT revenues that go to the street funds. So you can see starting with revenue sharing, you generated about $380,000 of revenue sharing in 15. That number jumped over $400,000 through 2017 and 2018, and then climbed up to about $479,000 for 2021. So a positive upward trend in state revenue sharing. You can see a similar relationship with distributions to the streets. It generated about $287,000 of revenues in 15. That jumped up over $400,000 for 2018 and 2019. And for 2021, you did generate about $479,000 in distributions from MDOT. So in the next slide, now this is an interesting slide. This is the property tax revenue trend. Again, going back to 2015. So you can see in 2015, you generated about $1,179,000 in property taxes. That number came up over $1.3 million for 19. And then for 2021, you did generate about $1,434,000 in property taxes. So you can see a positive upward trend here, but if we actually took this back to 2009, for instance, you actually generated about $1,615,000 in property taxes in 2009. So even though you see this, a positive upward trend from 2015, you still generated about $181,000 less in property taxes during 2021 than you did back in 2009. And the reason for that is because of the statutory limitations placed on property taxes. So you have Proposal A, which limits the property tax growth on individual properties within the city to the lesser of 5% or inflation. And then you have the Headley Amendment, which actually comes in and limits property tax growth for the city as a whole. So you get hit twice. So what ends up happening is, if you remember, and fortunately a lot of us went through it, in 2010 and 2011, there was a bit of a housing market crisis. So housing values went down drastically in a very short period of time, so taxable values followed suit. Well, because of those caps placed on property tax values, they're climbing back up at a very slow rate. So even though, for instance, the market value of a house may have gone back up within 2 or 3 years after that by as much as 30%, well, it continues to be limited by 5% or inflation for property tax growth. So it's going to take a long time to climb out of that hole. So again, even though things are going very well, you have $181,000 less to work with in property taxes now than you did back in 2009 because of those limitations. Now on the next slide, we're looking at the general fund balance going back to 2015. So you can see for the period ended June 30, 2015, your ending fund balance was about $1,457,000. You can see that came down, and you used a significant portion of that in 2017, and it came down to $919,000. That's because, those of you that were here then, if you remember, that was the year you had to make those significant seawall improvements. You made improvements to the Lions Field. So you used a significant portion of your fund balance in that year. And then you can see it bounced back in 2018, and that's because that's the year you received money from the government to help pay for the seawall improvements. So the good news is it recovered. And you can see that, in spite of the loss of property tax revenues, you've been able to maintain and actually grow your fund balance level in the general fund. Now, on the next slide, last two funds I want to talk about briefly are water and sewer. Now, these funds are quite a bit different than the general fund in major and local streets. These are what we call enterprise or proprietary funds. We call them proprietary funds because they're accounted for like a for-profit private business, and that's because the city owns the water and sewer plants, and then it charges the residents for use of those systems. So they're intended to be self-sustaining. So here we're looking at the statement of net position. So you can see the sewer fund had total assets at the end of the year of about $2,729,000. But you can see the majority of those assets are in this category called non-current assets. So these are non-liquid assets. So this would be the actual sewer plant itself, all the major, the sewer lines, the major equipment. Those are all tied up into non-liquid assets. So you can see you had $199,000 of liabilities against those assets and finished the year with an ending net position of about $2,530,000. But roughly 1.6 million of that net position is non-liquid net position. It's tied up in those fixed assets. So really, the liquid portion of your net position, or the unrestricted, was at $951,000. Now in the water fund, you see something very similar. You had total assets on hand at the end of the year about $9,532,000. But again, much of that is tied up in those non-liquid assets. You had about $6.9 million tied up in the water plant and the equipment itself. You had liabilities against those assets of about $588,000. Then finished the year with an $8.9 million net position. But again, 6.9 of that net position is not liquid, it's not spendable. So you can see the unrestricted, or the liquid net position, if you will, was about $1,528,000 in water. Now on the next slide, this is the income statement for these two funds. You can see sewer fund had operating revenues of $588,000, had some non-operating revenues of $154,000, spent about $654,000, so it had an increase to its net position of about $88,000 during the year. In the water fund, you had total operating revenues of just over $1 million, non-operating revenues about $262,000, and you spent about $1,185,000 to have a net increase to your net position of about $136,000. Now, in the next slide, I just want to really briefly talk about our audit process. What do we do when we come in here? Our audit's performed in what we refer to as all the major accounting functions. So this would be purchasing, cash receipts, utility billing, adjusting journal entries, payroll, bank reconciliations. So for purchasing, for instance, we're actually looking at samples of invoices. So we're making sure that the invoices have been approved by department heads, by the city treasurer. We're making sure that they're eventually getting on the schedule of bills and being approved at the commission level. And we're also making sure that they are purchases which are allowable for local governments, for municipalities. Utility billing's a big one. Payroll's a big one. We're actually looking at samples of timesheets, making sure employees are being paid for time spent working at rates which have been approved by council. And of course, we're making sure payroll taxes have been paid properly and timely. And then, of course, our year-end reconciliations are performed to put together that bound financial statement. And really, we're in contact with the city throughout the year, primarily Linda. We assist with any questions regarding transactions. We also do various state filings and compliance reports. One would be the Act 51 compliance, which is related to the street funds. We also do the F65 annual filing. I kind of explain that to people. It's sort of like a tax return for a city. We also assist Linda with reporting information to the state to get your state revenue sharing. And again, we have a good positive relationship with everyone in the city. You guys do a really good job with your financial, record keeping, very accurate. Obviously you have a very experienced, city manager and city treasurer, and, they stay on top of this stuff for you guys. And again, it makes things good for us, and really, that's the kind of relationship we prefer. We don't wanna just come in once at the end of the year and then have that the first time we're looking at everything. We're in constant contact throughout the year, which keeps us up to date with what's going on throughout the city. We're also, throughout the year, following your city council meetings. We actually track those throughout the year, so we know what's being discussed. That way we know what to expect throughout the audit. If there are any major purchases, any key points of discussion, we're on top of that throughout the year. So, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Any questions?
As always, we love to see a nice, healthy fund balance. I know there's more to it than that.
Sure.
That's always nice to see every year, and I do know that you're here and in contact with Linda and Denise all the time, and it's a team effort to go through all this throughout the year. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach.
All right, let's get the agenda back out. And at this time, it is time for public comment. Keep in mind, that if you choose to speak, you have 5 minutes to speak, and you can state your name, you're to state your name and your address. Does anyone care to speak? We'll close that window quickly. And we'll go on to the city manager's report. Mrs. Gerstenberg, do you have anything for us?
Not this evening.
All right, and so we go on to our consent agenda. This evening, our consent agenda consists of our city council meetings from our last meeting on December 21st, 2021. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Discussion, comments, questions, or concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we've approved our consent agenda. We have no unfinished business, so we'll get right into the new business tonight. We're being asked to approve communication system between the water plant and the water tower. In July 2021, Utilities Instrumentation Service, SCADA, installed a new equipment at the water tower so that the high service pumps would shut off when the water tower was full. The next step is to install new equipment so that personnel at the water plant can use a computer to control motors, pumps, valves, and various other equipment at the water tower. SCADA is an acronym for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. SCADA is everywhere. It's the temperature controlling in your house, the water you drink, the car you drive. It's in the gas you pump, power you use, and flights you take, and much more depends on a SCADA system. We received one quote for this work. May I have a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve installation of a communication system between the water tower and the water plant to UIS SCADA, whose address is 2290 Bishop Circle East in Dexter, Michigan, in a total amount of $2,800.
Support.
Discussion? Would like to say I was surprised when reading this that so much depends on that service and that using data and the controls for that data. It surprised me, but I guess it shouldn't have with all the electronics that we have. Any questions about this? Comments, concerns? Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Bedlis.
Yes.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Gillis.
Yes.
Councilwoman Harris.
Yes.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Scarback.
Yes.
Mayor Stoneburner.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we're being asked to approve emergency road repairs done by Jerry Martin Asphalt and Coatings LLC for emergency road repair following the emergency water main repair at 365 Sherwood. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve payment to Jerry Martin Asphalt and Coatings, whose address is 9185 Peters, Algonac, Michigan, for emergency road repair at 365 Sherwood in the amount of $1,500.
Support.
Comments, questions, or concerns? I I will say that I like that we have several vendors that we use, and Jerry Martin being one of them. He's very responsive to our needs in emergency situations, and I appreciate that. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Gillis.
Yes.
Councilwoman Harris.
Yes.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Scarback.
Yes.
Mayor Stoneburner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bembas.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we're being asked to consider boards and commissions reappointments. The following board members have terms expiring or have expired and would like to be reconsidered or considered for reappointments. On the Board of Review is Chuck Bailey, whose term ends January 6th of this year. Library Board is Deborah Scruggs, whose term ended October 1st. Zoning Board of Appeals is Judith Gulliver, whose term expired February 1st of this year, and Ron Schwark, whose term expires February 1st this year. The boards and commissions appointment policy approved by City Council in December of 2015 states that new applicants will not be sought out in the case of a requested reappointment unless by the majority of council. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the following boards and commission reappointments. Charles Bailey to the Board of Review for a 2-year term ending January 6, 2024. Deborah Scruggs to the Library Board for a 3-year term ending October 1, 2024. Judith Gulliver to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term ending February 1, 2025. And Ron Schwark to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term ending February 1, 2025. Support.
Any discussion?
I have just a comment if I could.
Yes.
I would like to thank them for, each of them for reappointing themselves. It makes our job a lot easier and also gives us that long time.
Continuation.
Thank you. That's exactly. Thank you for that. Long time continuation of the current board. Thanks, Mike. I'm struggling with that one.
This is important. Knowing what's
Red
happened
shirts have to
before.
stick together.
Anyone else? I too like that they want to stay on. We have good people there, and it's nice to keep good people. Also, if anyone is interested in boards and commissions throughout, you could apply for those, and when openings come up, you can be considered for that. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we have appointments, reappointments. Next, we're being asked to approve street sweeper rental from Bell Equipment, the rental of the street sweeper to sweep all city streets that have curb and gutters to clean the streets and protect the city's stormwater system. The work was done in May. It not only makes the streets cleaner, but it also is an important part of the stormwater pollution prevention. It prevents unwanted materials from flowing into the storm drains, including our waterways, and causing backups and flooding. We had $3,000 budgeted for fiscal year 2021. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve payments of Bell Equipment, whose address is 78 North Point Drive, Lake Orion, Michigan, in the amount of $3,300.
Support. Any discussion?
I just have one simple question, Mayor. Is this something we just want to do once a year, or is it something that's beneficial not to do more often?
Well, we've talked about having it done at least once a year. It may be something we want to look at in the future to have done more often.
I don't know if it's necessary or not,
Yeah.
but it's something we
Mrs.
should
Kirstenberg?
consider.
Thank you, Mayor Stoneburner. At this time, we are satisfied with performing it once a year. Once we get more information from our SAW grant, we may want to increase it. We have not ever done it before, so
All right,
made a big difference this year.
it
I
did,
think so too.
I have one comment.
yes.
If everybody would take an extra 5 minutes in front of their house and who has curb and gutter, we could do a lot to satisfy whether we have to do this or not, more in a year. I can name places where people have just blown stuff into the street.
Yeah.
Just take care of it in front of your house. Keep a cost like this down.
That's a good idea. Also, when we have the grass clippings and leaves in the roadway like that, it's dangerous as well.
Mhm.
And
And I find it dangerous to watch Mr. Martin out there cleaning the street in front of his house on F-29.
He looked both ways. We thank you for that,
Yes, thank you.
Councilman Martin.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes,
How often, I'm sorry, can I address?
Yes.
City Manager Denise, how often does, state come through or the county come through for M29? Do they ever do a sweep?
Councilman Scarbeck, we have not seen them do a sweep of M29.
Can we request that? Cause it's pretty bad.
I can request it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, roll call, please.
Councilman Gillis.
Yes.
Councilwoman Harris.
Yes.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Scarbeck.
Yes.
Mayor Stoneburner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bembas.
Yes.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Next, we're being asked to approve our accounts payable and payroll. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve accounts payable and payroll in the amount of $402,996.08.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Harris.
Yes.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Scarbeck.
Yes.
Mayor Stoneburner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bembas.
Yes.
Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Gillis.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Mrs. Gerstenberg, what's on our next agenda?
Thank you, Mayor Stoneburner. We will have renewal of the emergency reporting system from the fire department to adopt the 2022 poverty exemption resolutions from our city assessor. And we have been just notified today that our engineering firm, Hubble Roth & Clark, applied for a drinking water asset management grant. And we are the recipient of that grant, and it is well over $400,000. So we will have that agreement on hopefully next year.
All right, thank you. Knew you'd say something. All right, thank you. Council comment, Councilman Blair.
Well, good evening, Happy New Year, everyone. Again, I wanna give a thanks to McBride Manley for always keeping us up to date and doing a fabulous job. Linda Mackey, our city manager, we always seem to be in a positive note in our fund balance. I think our city council has to take some responsibility on that as well. We're progressively moving forward in the way a city should, so I want to give a shout out to that as well. On a sadder note, I would like to send my deepest prayers and condolences to my friend, Mr. Carter. We lost a friend and a longtime community member who worked for our school system for quite some time as well. There's no words I can probably say that will comfort Mr. Carter at this time, but our sincerest condolences on the loss of your wife, for sure. I don't have anything else. That's enough. Thank you for coming.
Councilman Gillis.
I'd like to thank McBride Manley as well. When you have a staff like with City Treasurer Mackey and City Manager Gerstenberg, they sure make our job easier. Mr. Carter, Ed, I'd like to offer you my sincere condolences as well. It was a very special time that we all spent together, and we're there for you.
Mayor Pro Tem Bembas.
Thank you, McBride Manley. It's kind of like, I've been on council now for 9 years, and other than changing the numbers, you give us the same report, and that's a good thing, I think. 99% of that is staff, Lisa, Linda, and Denise, and thank you guys. And I'm sure next year it'll probably be the same, and you'll say, we're looking good, and now this is how much money we got. So look forward to seeing you guys next year too. And of course, Mr. Carter, your family is in our prayers.
Councilman Martin.
I also would like to thank the firm of McBride and Manley for their efforts on behalf of the city. Thank you very much. Thank you, administration, for the success of our audit. And Linda's not here, but Linda's very important in that. And, I offer my condolences to Ed Carter also, and, loss of a family member. I know members of the family quite well, and just found it out tonight, so, sorry, Ed.
Councilwoman Harris?
I want to congratulate, Linda Mackey and staff and Denise on the great audit. Thank you, McBride and Manley. And I also want to offer my condolences to you, Ed.
Councilman Scarpick?
I'm gonna follow with the rest. I wanna thank McBride and Manley for everything they do. I wanna thank Linda and staff for everything they do for us also. And I wanna give my condolences to Ed also. And I also wanna thank everyone that has been part of our commissions and boards, and I'm glad they're getting reappointed. Thank you guys, have a good night. Oh, actually, one last thing.
Yeah.
Due to all the COVID cases going around in the community, we made a decision, we are gonna be canceling the Rolling Brook fundraiser. We're gonna announce it tomorrow on Facebook. We just think it's the right thing to do, so we don't have 300 people shoulder to shoulder and make it a super spreader. So we're gonna be posting that tomorrow, and if something else comes up, we'll keep everyone posted. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. I'd also like to thank our deputies, our fire department, the water department, DPW, and everybody that kept working on the holidays, so that the rest of us who don't work on the holidays could enjoy our families and do things. And I know, you guys are always on call during that time, and I appreciate it. Ed, I am sorry beyond words with what you're going through. I know Michelle, not only did I get to know her as a neighbor, but I go into the schools in Algonac, and she's impacted a lot of kids and staff in the schools. Our deepest sympathies to you and your family. Curtis McBride, Amy Delia, Linda Mackey, City Manager Gerstenberg, and all the department heads, and in fact, all the workers here. It's a team effort to make everything work, and we thank you. And if there's anything we can do to make it easier for anybody, you gotta let us know. If there's another system that you need to work with, let us know what you need. As Mayor Pro Tem Bembas said, it's nice hearing that report every time. It really is. There are many communities that are not in that position. I know we've been paying ahead on the pension payments, and that has been a huge help. And it will continue to be a big help for us, that we won't be in some of the dire straits that some other municipalities are in. And I appreciate that. I thank you for your advice to us and all the work with the staff here. And with that.
Oh, you're back.
Rocky, I'm never gone.
Oh, yes, you were.
It's in Florida, sorry. My wife had to see the Magic Kingdom for the 50th anniversary. But with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned.